They say making money in the market is easy. The hard part is keeping it. Every bull run creates new millionaires, but every bear cycle reminds them who forgot to exit. And that's where Jesse Livermore stood apart. He didn't just know how to enter, he mastered how to leave. What if I told you the real secret to Livermore's success wasn't his timing on entries, but his discipline on exits? The quiet strategy he used to walk away before the storm hit, while others stayed and drowned in greed. Think about that. How many times have you watched profits evaporate because you stayed just one trade too long? Comment your thoughts below. I want to know your toughest exit moment. In the early 1900s, Livermore was not just a trader. He was a student of human behavior, his own most of all. He watched markets rise and fall like tides, but he also watched his emotions move in rhythm with them. The panic, the greed, the confidence, the denial. He learned that the market wasn't a machine, it was a mirror, and that mirror exposed every weakness a trader tried to hide. When Livermore made or lost fortunes, it was never by accident. Each move came from understanding that exits aren't mechanical. They're psychological. The crowd never wants to sell. The crowd wants to be right, and being right feels better than being safe. But Livermore didn't trade for validation. He traded for survival. That's why his exits were surgical, emotionless, and often lonely. He used to say, "It was never my thinking that made me money. It was my sitting." But sitting, for Livermore, didn't mean waiting forever. It meant waiting until the market told him the story was over. He listened for changes in tone. He sensed when enthusiasm turned to arrogance, when fear turned to denial. Those were his signals, not the tape, not the news. The crowd's psychology was his chart. Today, traders still chase that same illusion. Algorithms have replaced ticker tape, but emotions haven't evolved. Every portfolio, every P&L, every chart still hides one question: when do you leave the table? Livermore's answer wasn't about a price point. It was about emotional equilibrium. He knew when he felt too confident, he was already in danger. That's the paradox of trading. The moment you feel safest is usually when you're most exposed. His hidden exit strategy wasn't written in any book. It lived in his discipline, in his understanding that protection isn't defensive, it's proactive. To keep your fortune, you must act before the pain arrives. Livermore exited not when he was losing, but when the crowd forgot risk existed. He knew that every rally hides a trap, and every trap begins with comfort. As we explore his mindset, you'll see that Livermore's exits weren't just about saving capital. They were about preserving clarity, because when your mind is free from loss, it can see opportunity again. That's why he often said the hardest decision in trading isn't when to buy or sell, it's when to walk away. In this story, we'll uncover how Livermore read the signs, how he protected his fortune long before others saw danger, and how modern traders can apply the same mental framework today. The exit wasn't just a trade, it was an act of mastery. Now, let's go deeper. What truly made Livermore's exits so different? Why did others fail where he thrived? The answer lies in the conflict every trader faces: the tension between patience and greed, between staying and surviving. Every trader faces the same silent war. It isn't fought on the charts or in the headlines, it's fought in the mind. The paradox is simple: you make money by holding on, but you keep it by letting go. Most traders can't do both. Think about your last winning trade. You watched the position rise, felt the rush of being right, and then came the whisper, maybe a little more. That whisper is what destroys accounts. It convinces you the move has more room, that you've found something others missed. But that voice isn't insight, it's ego, disguised as confidence, and Livermore knew it well. He often said the market teaches you humility by force. When prices move in your favor, you feel untouchable. When they reverse, you feel betrayed. The conflict between those two emotions is where most traders lose their discipline. You tell yourself you'll exit when a sign appears, when the chart confirms it, but signs are always late. The mind delays what the instinct already knows, that the move is over. Livermore saw this conflict play out in every cycle. He watched men who once preached caution become gamblers when their stocks doubled. He watched fear vanish faster than profits could justify. The crowd only sees what it wants to see, and when it stops seeing risk, the top is near. That's the paradox of success. The better your position looks, the closer you are to danger. In his time, he described this moment as the point of maximum confidence. It's the exact point where the trader's vision becomes blurred by success. The numbers look perfect, the press agrees, and the market feels easy. That's when he started planning his exit, not because he feared losing, but because he understood the rhythm of emotion. Every extreme invites correction. Modern traders experience the same trap, but faster. Social media charts flash green candles. Commentators call for targets that have no logic. The dopamine hits come quick, and reason fades. You start identifying with your trade. You don't just own the stock owns you. Livermore called this the death of objectivity. Once you tie your identity to a position, you can't exit without feeling like a failure. He used to walk away from his desk when he felt that attachment forming. He'd let the noise fade until he could see clearly again. That's not weakness, that's control. He knew that markets are designed to draw you in emotionally before they take back everything they gave you. The crowd sees a trend. Livermore saw a test. Every trader wants to believe they'll recognize the top. They think they'll know when it's time to leave. But the truth is, you never know in the moment. You only know after. Livermore's brilliance was that he didn't wait for confirmation. He acted on his understanding of psychology, not prediction. When the crowd lost respect for risk, he sold. When others still waited for proof, he was already safe. That's the paradox. The exit doesn't feel right when it's right. It feels premature, uncomfortable, and uncertain. But Livermore knew that comfort was a cost. To protect his fortune, he had to leave when his emotions begged him to stay. So how do traders fall into this trap again and again? How does greed override logic, even in the smartest minds? The answer lies deeper in the emotional architecture of every trade, where excitement turns to attachment, and attachment turns to blindness. Every great loss begins the same way, not with bad data, not with a bad entry, but with a small emotional compromise. You ignore one signal. You move a stop a little further. You justify holding just one more day. That's the start of the trap. Jesse Livermore knew that trap well because he fell into it himself. More than once, he used to say that the market punishes not your ignorance, but your disobedience. The moment you stop listening to your own rules, you've already lost control. The market doesn't care about your reasons. It only measures your discipline. The trap begins when profit blinds you to risk, and fear disguises itself as patience. Let's break down how it happens. You make a good trade. Confidence rises. The mind links that success to your identity. Now, the position isn't just a trade. It's proof that you're smart, capable, superior to the crowd. You stop managing risk because it feels insulting. You think, this one will keep running. I'll know when it's time. But the market doesn't send invitations. It sends signals, and when you ignore them, it takes everything back. Livermore saw this pattern in every trader who failed. They didn't lose because they didn't understand the market. They lost because they didn't understand themselves. The biggest enemy wasn't volatility. It was the ego that couldn't walk away. The market has a way of reflecting your character. If you crave validation, it will test your pride. If you crave certainty, it will feed you doubt. And if you crave action, it will punish your impatience. He often described this moment as the illusion of control. Traders believe they're managing the trade, but in truth, the trade is managing them. The stronger the emotional connection, the harder it becomes to act rationally. You start interpreting data to support your position instead of questioning it. You call it conviction, but it's bias. You call it patience, but it's denial. Livermore learned this lesson painfully during his early years. He made millions, lost them, and made them again. Every cycle taught him the same thing, that the hardest exit is the one that feels unnecessary. He recalled walking through Wall Street during bull markets and feeling the contagious optimism in the air. Men he respected talked like gamblers. The same ones who once preached discipline now laughed at caution. That's when he sold. He didn't need charts to see danger. He only needed human nature. Today, that same psychology plays out online. Forums, feeds, and influencers echo the same overconfidence Livermore saw in the bucket shops. When you're surrounded by voices cheering the same direction, it's almost impossible to sell. You fear missing out more than you fear being wrong. And that's the hook the market sets. It convinces you that selling too early is the ultimate mistake, when in reality, it's often the only way to survive. Livermore's insight was simple but profound. You can't exit rationally if you're emotionally invested. He treated every trade as temporary, every profit as borrowed time. The moment he felt emotional weight in a position, he looked for the door, not because the trade was bad, but because attachment was forming. He understood that the deeper the attachment, the slower the reflex. and slow reflexes are fatal in markets. So the core problem isn't about timing or tools. It's about emotional hygiene, the ability to detach before the market forces you to. Livermore built that discipline by treating exits as his primary defense, not an afterthought. For him, survival was strategy. Now that we understand the trap, the next question becomes clear. How did Livermore design a system strong enough to escape it? What rules did he create to protect himself when emotion threatened to take control? That's where his true genius appears. Jesse Livermore believed that markets were built on emotion, not logic. He saw charts as maps of collective psychology. Every spike, every dip, every sideways drift told him one thing: how the crowd felt. To him, exits were not about predicting price but reading emotion before it reached its peak. He built a philosophy around that. Livermore didn't exit because a line broke or a number hit. He exited because human behavior hit saturation. He said that a trader must learn to sell not when the market looks weak, but when it feels euphoric. When caution disappears, danger hides in plain sight. That was his compass. His rule was clear: the market is never wrong, but opinions often are. He used this as his anchor when emotions started to rise. If his opinion began to feel too comfortable, he questioned it. When others stopped questioning theirs, he knew the top was near. He never tried to argue with the tape. He listened. When it whispered, he acted. That was his protection. Livermore's exit strategy was built on three principles: detachment, observation, and preparation. Detachment kept him from overcommitting emotionally. Observation let him read shifts in behavior that others ignored. Preparation ensured that when his instincts fired, he didn't hesitate. Every decision was planned long before the moment arrived. That's how he stayed calm while others panicked. He once described an exit as leaving before the lights go out. He didn't need to see the crash to know it was coming. He could sense it in tone, volume, and attitude. When everyone believed prices could only go higher, he sold. He preferred to be early and safe than late and desperate. That habit saved him during the 1907 panic and again during the 1929 collapse. Others called it luck. He called it discipline. His mindset wasn't pessimistic. It was practical. He knew that no move lasts forever, and that every rally plants the seeds of its own destruction. When people stop fearing loss, the market loses balance. Livermore trained himself to act when balance disappeared. It wasn't about prediction. It was about timing his emotion to match the market's rhythm, not fight it. Modern traders can apply this by tracking emotion instead of price alone. When your conviction feels absolute, step back. When your position feels like identity, reduce it. When you find yourself explaining why a trade will never fail, prepare your exit. Livermore didn't rely on forecasts. He relied on his real tool wasn't a system, it was self-control. He often said, "A man must believe in himself and his judgment if he expects to make a living, but not too much." That balance is the foundation of every successful exit. Confidence must never become arrogance. The crowd always shifts from rational to emotional before it breaks. And Livermore used that moment as his exit signal. His approach wasn't about escaping loss, it was about preserving freedom. Once you lose control of emotion, you lose the freedom to act. Livermore's exits gave him clarity. They allowed him to re-enter fresh, with judgment unclouded by regret or pride. That's how he protected not only his fortune but also his focus. He viewed each exit as an act of self-respect. It proved that he controlled the trade, not the other way around. When others mocked him for selling early, he smiled. He knew markets always give second chances, but they rarely forgive hesitation. He'd rather leave a little money on the table than leave his discipline there. Now that we've seen Livermore's philosophy, let's bring it to life. Let's step into a real moment from his career, one that shows how he used this hidden exit strategy. When the entire market was blind to risk. It was October 1929. The air in New York was electric. Every man with $1 was a speculator. Every speculator thought he was a genius. The newspapers called it the new era. Stocks could only go up. Bankers toasted to prosperity that would never end. That was the rhythm of euphoria, and Jesse Livermore could feel it pulsing through Wall Street like a fever. He had seen it before. The same confidence before the panic of 1907. The same laughter before the crash of 1917. This was no different. But what made Livermore unique wasn't that he spotted weakness in the market. It was that he recognized weakness in the crowd's psychology. He could sense when people stopped asking questions. That was his signal to prepare his exit. while others doubled down. Livermore began quietly building short positions. He sold into strength while the world celebrated. His brokers thought he was insane. The press called bears unpatriotic. Even his friends told him he'd lost touch. But Livermore didn't trade for applause. He traded to survive. He once said, "There is nothing new on Wall Street." There can't be, because human nature never changes. He didn't care about the ticker or the headlines. He cared about behavior. When people start believing that the old rules no longer apply, that's when the reckoning begins. And in October 1929, he felt that shift in every conversation, every handshake, every newspaper headline. By the third week of the month, volume exploded. Prices became unstable. Livermore's instincts sharpened. He saw the first cracks. Stocks that once led the rally stopped rising. Margin debt hit record levels. The tape lost rhythm. That was the moment he knew, not because he saw proof, but because he sensed panic hiding beneath confidence. The crowd didn't know it yet, but fear had already entered the room. He didn't tell anyone his plan. He didn't boast. He exited quietly, like a man leaving before the lights went out. By October 24th, when the first real wave of panic hit, Livermore was already positioned on the other side. The same traders who mocked him days before were now calling for advice. The floor of the exchange was chaos. Phones rang endlessly. Men shouted, pleaded, broke down. And Livermore watched. Detached, protected. In just a few days, the market erased years of gains. Fortunes vanished overnight. Livermore's account, however, soared. His decision to exit early, to act when it felt wrong, had preserved his capital and multiplied it when everyone else was paralyzed. Newspapers later reported that he made over $100 million from that move, one of the largest trading profits in history. But for him, it wasn't triumph. It was confirmation that his rules worked. He didn't celebrate. He didn't brag. He walked the streets of New York that night and said later that it felt like a funeral. The city was silent. He knew that for every dollar he made, thousands of traders had lost everything because they couldn't let go. That was the lesson. You don't win by being smarter than others. You win by being more disciplined than your emotions. Livermore's exit wasn't luck. It was a process. He read the tone, watched behavior, and trusted the uncomfortable feeling that told him it was time to act. That instinct only develops through self-honesty, the kind most traders avoid because it forces them to admit weakness. But Livermore embraced that discomfort. He turned it into his edge. Even today, that mindset applies. When everyone feels invincible, the market is fragile. When fear disappears, opportunity ends. The best traders sense that shift, not through indicators, but through intuition shaped by discipline. Livermore's greatest victory wasn't in predicting the crash. It was in resisting the temptation to stay. Now, we've seen how he executed his strategy when it mattered most. In the next section, we'll bring this full circle, what this exit philosophy means for modern traders, and how it still protects those who have the courage to act early. Before the lights go out, the market never really changes. Technology evolves, charts look different, and information moves faster. But the human mind, the source of every rise and fall, stays the same. That's why Jesse Livermore's hidden exit strategy still matters. It wasn't about timing the market. It was about mastering yourself when the crowd loses its mind. He taught that the best traders are not the boldest, but the calmest, the ones who know how to step back when everything feels easy, the ones who treat exits not as defeat, but as discipline. Livermore's true edge was his detachment. He could watch a fortune slip through his fingers and feel nothing, because he knew survival was success. As long as he protected his clarity, the next opportunity would come. That's the quiet truth most traders never face. Making money is not proof of skill. Keeping it is. You can win 1,000 trades and still lose everything if you never learn to leave the table. The market rewards courage, but it punishes stubbornness. Livermore knew that. His exits were not reactive. They were acts of foresight, born from understanding how emotions destroy logic. He used to say, "You can't fight the tape," but he also meant, "You can't fight yourself." The crowd always waits for confirmation, for a reason to act. Livermore acted on awareness. He understood that fear and greed take turns steering the market, and the only constant force you can control is your own behavior. That's why his exits looked early to others. They weren't early, they were precise. Imagine applying that mindset today. You watch your trade climb, profits multiply, and voices around you shout to hold. Your instincts whisper otherwise. Most traders silence that whisper. Livermore listened. That small moment of restraint separates those who protect their fortune from those who donate it back to the market. His philosophy lives in every serious trader's heart, even if they don't realize it. The quiet awareness that your emotions are the real battlefield. The courage to sell when you feel invincible. The discipline to walk away when others still chase. That's how fortunes are protected, not through luck, not through complex systems, but through psychological precision. Livermore's story didn't end perfectly. His later life was filled with personal struggles. But his lessons endured because they spoke to something permanent, the fragile balance between confidence and humility. He showed that wealth without control is temporary, but control without ego is freedom. Every exit he made was a reminder of that truth. If you take one lesson from him, let it be this: the market never tells you when to leave. You must decide while you still can. The signal won't come from a chart. It will come from the feeling that something has changed, that comfort has replaced awareness. That's when Livermore would step aside, not in fear, but in respect for the cycle that never ends. So the next time your trade looks perfect, ask yourself, do I feel too safe right now? That question alone might protect your capital, your confidence, and your future. What about you? Would you have the nerve to exit when everyone else is cheering? Comment your thoughts below. Remember, Livermore's fortune wasn't protected by luck. It was protected by the courage to act before the crowd. That's not just trading, that's mastery.